Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
My name's Brian West. I'm at the Publix supermarket. They asked me to come down and talk to y'all this morning about healthy profit. So, are any of you familiar with Publix? Is anybody shopping?
Shopping is a pleasure.
Not trying to be funny, just not want to take anything for granted. So I'll tell you, this is a little bit different topic than what I normally speak on. Before we get started, I'll tell you this. Know that I want to answer the questions that you have, and I want to talk about the things that are interesting to you. But can you tell me some of the things that you like about Publix?
Friendly staff.
Consistent.
Clean, yeah.
Consistent products are all.
Good. Okay. Those are some things we're proud of. All right. So, in order to I think effectively get you to understand where we're coming from in terms of healthy profit, and really need to tell you a little bit of the story of Publix. Does anybody know how Publix began? Anyone?
In a small little like farm market. I don't remember the name.
All right, so it's a great story. There was a gentleman named George Jenkins, and George Jenkins grew up in Harris City, Georgia. And as a kid, he grew up in his father's full-service grocery store. And today, because our shopping is self-service, we don't know what full-service grocery is. But if you watch any old-time movies, where you walk into a grocery store and you'd say, "Hey, I need a pound of flour, a loaf of bread," and whatever those items are. Well, meanwhile, there's someone on the other side of the counter, and they're running around the store grabbing all of those and putting them into a basket. That was full-service grocery. So because Mr. George grew up in that environment, he knew what customer service was. It was all about doing things for the customer. But that wasn't what he wanted to do as a career. He wanted to actually be an engineer. And growing up in Georgia, he had dreams of going to Georgia Tech. But as a 16, 17-year-old, he had heard that there was a real estate boom taking place in Florida in the late 20s. And he packed up with $9 in his pocket, which was a lot of money then, but at the same time it was nothing. And drove to Florida with his cousin. And they got here, a 2-day trip, really. They got here, and the real estate boom was not what he had heard. There wasn't really a boom. And spent a couple of nights in a flop house. If you've never seen a flop house, it's literally a room about this size full of bunk beds. And a bunch of people who don't know each other flopping down and spend the night. It might cost you 50 cents to stay the night. Well, in a matter of a couple of days, he met a gentleman that owned or managed a couple of the local Piggly Wiggly stores. Anyone familiar with Piggly Wiggly? Right? So this gentleman hired him on, and in a very short period of time, 2 months, Piggly Wiggly put him in charge of their #1 store in Winter Haven. So here, he's a kid managing their #1 store and doing very, very well. Well, at some point in time, in a short period of time, Piggly Wiggly changed ownership out of their headquarters in Atlanta. And he was told for several months that the new owners were going to be coming by the store to see him, but they never showed up. So on his own, he decided to make a trip to Atlanta to meet the new owners. He had all these grandiose ideas that he wanted to share with them that would improve the business, even though he was managing the #1 store. So he makes this trip to Atlanta, shows up at the office and says, "Hi, I'm George Jenkins. I'm here to meet the owners." And all the while, he's hearing the secretary outside is telling him, "They don't have time for you." But he can overhear them talking about their golf game over the weekend. Now, he's their #1 manager. So he's mad, and he leaves, and on the 2-day drive back to Florida, he decides he's going to go into business for himself. And he sells shares of stock to afford the business. And the part that I think is brilliant about him getting started, especially as a kid, is here he's managing the #1 store. Well, guess where he decides to open? Literally right next door. The location still exists today. We visit it on a regular basis. So literally right next door. And he agrees to stay on for a couple of weeks to train the new manager. But he's smart enough to say, Mrs. Jones, just so you know, I'm going to be opening a new store next door in a couple of weeks. So he battled it out with the Piggly Wiggly over about a year, and then within a year, the Piggly Wiggly closed doors. Their #1 store closed because he took the business. It's incredible. And in that first year of business, he was smart enough to realize that if people have skin in the game, they're more likely to take care of something. So, think of how many own their own car. Do you take care of your car? Do you get the oil changed? Do you wash it? Those kinds of things. If you've ever had something that you didn't pay for, you might not have taken care of it. So Mr. George was smart enough in that first year to realize, the associates, there were 6 people working in the store at the time. They would probably take much better care of this company if they had skin in the game and they owned it. So on paper, he gave everybody a $2 a week increase in pay that they didn't know about and put that in the form of stock. Ownership of the company. Pretty cool stuff. Unheard of. This is 1930. 1930. So a few years later, he opens a discount store and realizes that's not his cup of tea. Publix is really about quality products, great customer service. It's not about price. We've got a saying in the grocery industry, especially Publix. There are 3 things in any real retail business. It's, are you going to focus on price? Are you going to focus on customer service? Are you going to focus on the quality of the product? Whatever those things are you're going to focus on, you better be good or the best at least 2 of them. We like to think that we're the best at quality and customer service. Otherwise, you're setting yourself up for failure. So in 1940, Mr. George opened, in essence, his 3rd store, but it was really his 2nd at the time because he closed the discount store. And eventually closed the 1st store to open what he called a food palace. And this is where Mr. George really started to introduce innovation in the grocery industry. A lot of the things that we take for granted today. Now, again, this is 1940. The location still exists today in Winter Haven. And it's literally 2 blocks from his first store. The store was about 30,000 square feet, considerably larger than his first store. In fact, the first store is about as big as this room, literally. Almost shape and size everything. It's about the size of this room. So the new store had things like air conditioning. That had never occurred. First air-conditioned supermarket in the United States. Electric eye doors. Something else we take for granted, and every business has those today. Marble floors. It was a palace. As they were installing the refrigeration systems to keep the meat cool, he realized, if I could get a plumber to tap into that piping, I could offer cold water to my customers. And they didn't get water. They didn't sell bottled water in 1930, 1940. So he did all these little things, people wares. And you've got the people wares in the stores, at least in Florida. Have you seen those? The scales at the front of the store, that you get on and weigh yourself. So, a lot of people say, where did that come from? Why did that start? Why did we have those in our stores? Well, in the early 1900s, when you weighed yourself, it was typically at your doctor's office. You didn't have bathroom scales like we do today. So if you were lucky, you got yourself weighed every year, every couple of years. People didn't go to the doctor regularly. So the people weigh was just kind of something neat that people could weigh themselves on. The difference was other businesses that offered them at a cost. You had to put a coin in it to get it to work. And Mr. George removed the coin system, so it was free to customers. Pretty neat stuff. So in 1945, Mr. George acquired 19 All-American food stores and a warehouse. It happened to be the wholesaler that he was buying product from. He realized, I've been in business long enough, I'm doing well, I'm making money, but if I really want to expand and give those associates that are working for me an opportunity to grow, I need more stores. And it really was about the people. There are 2 words that we use to describe Mr. George, caring and sharing. He cared about people to the end. met you once, he knew your name, and he never forgot you. And he can tell you all about your family, and tell others about your family, and sharing. He was never in the grocery business to make money. That ended up becoming a great result of his effort in trying to do the right thing. And he was once asked by a reporter in the 70s, Mr. George, what do you think you'd be worth today if you hadn't given away so much of your fortune? Literally, without missing a beat, he said, probably nothing. And that's the truth of it. So today, that is very much a part of our culture at Publix. And I share that part of the story to say, at Publix, our associates, once we've had them for some period of time and they've gotten a chance to learn who we are, they quickly understand how important it is to give back to the community and do things. The timing of being here today works out pretty well because just yesterday we celebrated our second annual Publix Serves Day. Any of you hear of this? It's not on. I thought you said it's. I thought you said it's not on Facebook. Yeah, Facebook blew up yesterday. Public Serves. So yesterday happened also to be a milestone. Mr. George's adopted grandson, Ed Crenshaw. Yesterday was his last day with the company. He spent the day flying around and popping in Public Service Day projects and surprising people and taking place. That was pretty cool. But anyway, so our associates volunteered their time yesterday in over 130 different projects around the Southeast. We have more than 4,500 associates show up. Very cool stuff, doing all kinds of things. But this year our focus was on helping those who are hungry and homeless. So we were building habitat homes, working with food banks, sorting produce, just all kinds of things. It was really good stuff. What did y'all see?
We work for Habitat for Humanity, actually, so we were out on the job sites.
Which one?
We in Hendry counties.
Very good. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Good. So along that same vein, that's really kind of how business gets started, and that's our culture of giving back. But how that relates to healthy profit, I really have to set that foundation to get you to understand everything we do is about doing the right thing, trying to be as efficient as we can, and passing that on to our customers as well when the opportunity is there. So we're always trying to figure out how can we operate more efficiently so that we're not having to increase prices when beef is going through the roof, when milk is going through the roof. Believe it or not, we're absorbing a lot of that cost, trying to keep the price down for our customers. We wouldn't be able to do those things if we weren't trying to operate so efficiently. So just a few examples, you think of recycling. Anybody can recycle. That's absolutely a given. You probably have recycling containers at your homes. At Publix, we recycle in such volume that it actually becomes profitable for us. Because it has gotten to the point where it's become, where we're changing the industry. We've shown the industry that it's possible to recycle cardboard in very specific ways, as long as you can get those retailers who are supplying the cardboard to the recycler to prepare it for them in a certain way. Recyclers don't like contaminants on cardboard, as an example. So if you have to get a piece of plastic in a bale of cardboard, they'll reject that load. So along with that comes a lot of training with your associates. You've got to get them to understand the importance of keeping like items with like items. Again, that's one example. Some other examples are electricity, recycling of metals, or in electricity. A lot of our energy usage at Publix is lighting. That's the single largest energy user at Publix. And if you don't know this, in the state of Florida, unfortunately, we happen to be the single largest user of electricity as a company. But we are forever trying to implement new lighting technologies within our stores to help save energy. Again, those things come at a cost. Even things like refrigerants. Most of you are probably aware of things like ammonia that we use as refrigerants. There is new technology out there that deals with CO2. We actually have 3 stores today where the refrigeration systems are operated off of CO2 in a way to save some energy. The bad thing about those, and one of the reasons that we don't promote those new technologies so much is that if we throw it out there to share with the world, hey, we found this new technology that's working, then you have somebody from left field come over and say, okay, when are you going to implement that on every one of your stores? That's tough because that comes at such a cost. So what we do is we find the technology and we try to implement it from that point forward, and then retrofit stores as we can. But we're pretty good about it, very effective. Trying to think of some other things, some other ways that we're saving some money. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Yes, ma'am.
Curious, how many public stores do you currently have?
Great question. I should have finished there with the story. So we started with that one store in 1930. So here we are today, 86 years later. We grew from 6 associates to almost 180,000 today, and 1,112 stores in 6 states. So basically the Southeast, it's Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Alabama. We just announced a few weeks ago that we move into Virginia. We announced 2 sites, but it's probably 2 years out before we open it. Yes, ma'am.
What's the structure of your corporate responsibility team?
We have, let's see, 5 now currently. Part of that, we've got a director of sustainability, basically. And they're involved in everything in every aspect of our business. One of the bigger things that maybe some of you in the room might be familiar with are food waste. And we're in the food business, so I'll give you some numbers that are absolutely staggering. In today's world, there is roughly 80 billion pounds of food that are wasted every year. Every year, 80 billion pounds. Okay? So anything that a food retailer can do, whether it's us selling raw products to a consumer to make something with, or even somebody in the restaurant industry who is selling finished good, prepared items, anything that a food retailer can do to help save on those waste is going to make an impact. But to put that waste number into perspective, there's roughly, now the number is going to change slightly depending on who you're hearing it from. There are roughly 45 million people in the United States that are hungry, are considered part of that culture, whether it's because they're part of the food desert, because their children aren't getting meals on the weekends, whatever that is, they're in that group. That 80 billion pounds of food that's wasted every year is more than enough to feed that group and 50% more. All year long, 3 squares a day. Okay? That's how much waste there is in the system. So again, anything that a food retailer can do to eliminate that waste is helpful. So trying to relate that to dollars. There are also tax incentives for businesses to make food donations. So fortunately that works for us. It's not the reason we do it. We are doing it to help those that need it. The tax benefit just becomes a side benefit. But to put it into perspective, since 2009, we have had a partnership with Feeding America, where they take all of our perishable food items. So perishable is any of the departments that you see on the perimeter of the stores, bakery, deli, meat, seafood, produce, any of those items. And the simplest way to describe it is, it's the apple with a bruise on it. No customer wants to walk into the store and buy the apple with a bruise on it. But there's nothing wrong with that apple. If you cut the bruise out, throw it away, that's still a good apple, right? So it's those types of items that we're donating over to food banks, and they're immediately pushing it out to those in need. Since 2009 through today, we have donated more than 200 million pounds of product, which is an incredible number. Equates to, let's make sure I've got the math right here, I want to say it's about 45 million meals is what that works out to, which is incredible. And that's something that we're pretty proud of. Any other questions?
Do you donate to Feeding the 5,000? I deliver meals on Thanksgiving for one of the churches. But it was all public state-based.
Yeah, and that, even to clarify, the number that I shared with you does not include our what we call our bakery sales. That's handled completely differently. Every one of our stores have the ability, our store manager has the ability to determine who is going to get the bakery sales. For those items, typically it's a local church, it's a local pantry, a local food bank. All of the other items go out the back door to that Feeding America affiliate. So down here, it's Heritage Aid. Yes, ma'am.
I'm just curious about, the code dates on foods, and many of us know they're not always, I smell my milk before I throw it away, can you give that kind of stuff away if the date is?
So use milk as an example. So believe it or not, yeah, and I do the same thing, and I'm touchy about it. I am touchy about that. So, and I'll share something neat about milk as a side as well. But milk, once it hits that date, it's actually still good for about 4 days after that. Okay? So if you don't know that, it is actually still good, even if you smell that smell. Okay?
Can I get you on video saying that?
Absolutely. So yeah, it's good for about 4 days. If it's refrigerated, yes. If refrigerated, yes. Let's all not make any assumptions. If refrigerated properly. But so yes, all of those are what we call sell-by dates. So that's the date we've got to sell it by, so that you as the consumer have a chance to safely consume that product. Okay. So at our dairy plant, we opened a dairy plant in 1980, and that's hard to believe. That's been 36 years ago. But in 1980, our president at the time, Joe Blanton, had this idea that we really needed to get into making our own dairy products. At the time, Borden was manufacturing all of our own products for us and putting our label on it. The funny story that goes along with it is Joe had done all his research, and he's sitting in the executive committee, and there's about 7 of them at the time, and they're going around the room for everybody to vote on it, and literally it's no, 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 no. And they get to Mr. George, and she looks at Joe and says, "Joe, what do you want to do?" And he says, "Moving forward." And that happened. It's a true story. So despite all the naysayers, he did it, and we've been exceptionally successful. But one of the first things that we learned at the time, I'm going to forget the name of the test, but there's a test that's done whenever we receive a trailer load of raw milk from the farm. State requirement says you can't have more than 300,000 parts per million of contaminants in that tractor trailer load of milk. We quickly realized within just a few months of opening the dairy plant that there's a direct correlation in the quality of the milk that's received to the quality of product that you push out the door. So we raised the threshold from 300,000 to 100,000. So our threshold today is if there are more than 100,000 parts per million in contaminants, we're going to reject it. They're going to take it down the street to another competitor and sell it to them. But we're not going to. That literally happens. It's not a joke. It is funny, but that literally happens. So because of that, our milk, our Publix milk, has a longer shelf life than any milk in the country.
It does.
It literally in the country. We have 4 to 7 days more shelf life than any other milk that's produced. I don't know why everybody doesn't do that. But the interesting thing is because we did that, it changed the industry. It was very tough for the farmers for quite a while to meet that threshold. They had to put processes in place on their end to ensure they could hit that level. But we rejected a lot of loads of milk before we got to that. We probably reject a load a week still. And it literally goes down the street to a competitor.
On that note, and I believe it was a Publix employee who told me this, but weren't you an innovator in the hormone-free milk?
Yes, ma'am. I'll leave it at that. There are so many things that we are continually, on a daily basis, trying to do for our customers, to give you the best, safest product that we possibly have. The unfortunate side of that is I think we've spoiled everybody. And so now when something comes up and it's controversial, they reach out to us and they want us to make a change and they expect that we're going to do it tomorrow. And we'd love to, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen. In fact, I'll tell you, I'm not even gonna tell you what it is, there's a hot button topic that we're getting phone calls and emails about on a daily basis right now. You're seeing other retailers, practically every other retailer out there has said, yeah, we're gonna do it. And so they're not hearing any heat. And some of them were even saying, oh yeah, and it's gonna be by this day in 2017, which we know is impossible. But the one thing that we will always say to our customer is, if we say we're going to do something, and if we give you a date, it's gonna happen by then, if not before. So we're just not ready to say that yet. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Back to sustainability. How much electricity have you actually saved by installing the monitors in your refrigerator, in your frozen food section, where the lighting goes off and on? Where it is
We don't have a way to pinpoint that particular savings, because there's so much electricity that's consumed. We just know that we have had a savings. Again, that's another one of those that's kind of funny. We install those in every location that we can. Unfortunately, we've got a handful of stores where we've had to go in and turn it off because the customers complain about it.
Oh, God.
Literally. Fortunately, it's only a handful, but it does happen. But that's been a great innovator for us. It's one of those things that most of our customers embrace. They, I'm the person that if I walk out of the room, I'm turning the light off, and I'm constantly slapping my kids around, figuratively. Turn the light off, turn the fan off. If you're not in the room, why are you leaving that stuff on? You're just wasting dollars. So, good question.
So one of the things that we implemented at Goodwill when my former title was Senior Director of Sustainability, one of the things that we implemented was we married out to your Green Initiatives program, because I know Kim, who works with him, Publix Corporate, in the recycle solid waste team. And one of the things we did at Goodwill, probably 3 years ago, was those little signs that you have in your bathrooms that say, if the water's running or if the toilet's running, or please notify me as your, Green Initiatives, whatever. So I copied it, took a picture, quickly gave to the marketing department, kind of changed the wording a little bit, but we implemented that.
Steal shamelessly. It's okay.
Well, I will say, we we have 30 stores in 5 counties here in Southwest Florida, and our revenue is close to $40 million, and our money goes into helping job training programs for people with disabilities and other barriers to employment. And when we implemented that just little thing where we put those signs all in our bathrooms, around all of our facilities, we saved 4% in our water bill in a year. And I know 4%, maybe, but 4%
4% is 4%.
equal to us about $22,000. And when we look at it from a job placement standpoint, that's a salary for somebody maybe that has a barrier or a disability. So we did steal that from y'all, and I will say it made a huge difference.
Yeah, and a difference here is, taking it back to the story that I shared with you at the beginning, that at Publix, we're all stakeholders. We've all got skin in the game.
Right.
We own stock in the company. We own the company. So every day when we step in the door, we're stepping in the door with vested interest to do our best and do everything we can for the bottom line and for our customers. Because without our customers, we wouldn't have a bottom line. Yes, sir.
So, I hear a lot of what you guys are doing in the store, which is great. And I'm a big fan of Publix. But what about your distribution facilities and so on and so forth? What are you doing at those places that are a little more industrial, if you would, reducing any sort of, say, emissions there, carbon footprint and so on and so forth?
All of
Your trucking, there's a lot that you guys do.
I'll tell you, the tough thing about all of this is being able to capture it all. But just to give you some simple examples, okay, so we talked about food waste, and we talked about what we do with our perishable recovery program, donating back to food banks, right? With our manufacturing facilities, all of that food waste is donated for animal consumption. 100% of it goes for animal consumption. Anything that we're able to capture. There's some things that go down the drain. We can't do anything with that, but everything that we can capture. That's one simple example. We've got a fleet of pushing 700 tractors on the road and about 2,300 trailers. We're looking at everything from tire design to wind flare, to cut down on fuel emissions. We're buying the latest technology when we buy our tractors as far as emissions go. It's everything from the ground up. There isn't any part of the business that we're not continually looking at. Anybody ever heard of Deming? Quality improvement, continuous improvement, any of those things? You know, when the U.S. bombed Japan and ended World War II, you know, they were devastated. Well, a gentleman by the name of Deming, he was all about the scientific method and this process of continual improvement. He went to Japan and taught those people how to get themselves basically back on their feet. And they've become a great industrial country today. Well, in the 80s and 90s, that was a very popular study for retail business. And we went through that. All of our managers went through those lessons. We still go through those lessons today. But the whole idea behind it is you study a process, you look for a way to improve it, and then you go, right? No. When you go through these classes, you look for a way to improve it. If you improve it, great. Now the next team comes through and they do the same thing with the same process. In other words, there's always opportunities for improvement. Just because you fixed it now and you're seeing an improvement, don't rest on your laurels. Figure out another way to improve the same thing. So we're continually doing that. We do that across all 32 of our business areas. Yes, ma'am.
Do you own your own logistics fleet?
We sure do.
And how many of your vehicles are run on like CNG and LNG?
So we even have pool cars. I've got a pool car that if I'm going to drive more than about 30 minutes from the office, I go check out a vehicle. So I'm not putting miles on my car. They're all fuel-efficient vehicles. For a while, we only had Priuses. Now, unfortunately, that has expanded a little bit. You feel like you're driving a tin can. But we're, you know, it's those kinds of things. So absolutely, there's just not anything that we want to consider when it comes to, can we somehow implement a savings, do it safely, and then potentially pass that on to our customers.
Well, on the reverse side, do you anticipate electric charging stations being, I mean, according to the market? I know
We have those.
You do?
We do. We have charging stations in, I'm not going to give you the latest number. I'm going to say it's a little less than a dozen locations. They're not that popular, but as they become more popular, we put them in our parking lots and they're free to our customers. Yes. Pretty cool. Anyone else? Okay, we're done. See y'all later. No other questions, really? Yes, well, two. Yes, ma'am.
My son told me that you're building some concept store in Gainesville, like with a deli, a smaller version of a Publix. Is that true? What is that?
I can't talk about it. So, yes, we have a new prototype that we call a 20 stretch, which basically means it can be anywhere in the 20,000 square foot range. So 20,000 to 29,999. But basically, it's just a smaller store. The challenges that come with that are, you know, first figuring out, maybe this isn't the hard part. The reason that you develop that small prototype store is realizing that there's an opportunity in a market for us to sell more product, but we can't fit a larger store there. The challenge that comes with that, if you have a smaller store design, is what products are you not going to carry in that store so that you don't inconvenience the customer. So the simple example is that particular prototype that we're looking at, we're actually, there's kind of a race behind the scenes. Which division is going to get that store yet? And right now it looks like I'm winning. We're going to put one on the campus at the University of South Florida. But the challenge with that is, again, what product? So the other locations that we think about are along the coast at the beach. Okay? People are on vacation at the beach, right? Well, here's the simple example is, when you're at the beach, do you ever think about, I want to bake a cake while I'm here? No, right? So we probably wouldn't have cake mix in that location. But you're certainly going to have a deli with sliced meats, because everybody wants to make sandwiches while they're at the beach, right? So, but it's that balance. What are you not gonna carry that's gonna upset the customer? So that's the challenge. But yes, that is absolutely true, it is gonna happen. We've got several spots that have been identified, Gainesville is one.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry to get about the sell line dates. Once you get past those dates, you can't sell the items anymore again. So are those items that you normally do to the food banks?
Yes, ma'am. Typically, once we hit the sell-by date, and we don't want to sell that to our customer, yes, we're pushing that over to the food bank. The food banks are immediately putting it in the hands of those that need it.
What about the use by dates? The ones that talk about use by dates?
Sell-by and use-by are the same thing. Oh, no, use-by. Yes, the use-by date, if we can't get it before that, then it's going to donation for animal consumption. Yes, ma'am. It's amazing to me on a daily basis. It feels like I'm learning about some big cat rescue, and they've got tigers just down the street from your house. It feels like I can't believe the number of these locations that seem to pop up around. You're driving past lions, tigers, elephants online on a daily basis, and you don't know it. So, yes, ma'am.
I know, Brian, we talked a little before your talk, but why, you had mentioned that in some of your stores, a few of them, you have new dietitians.
Yes, ma'am.
How did you decide to do that, and how effective has it been?
Every time we implement a new product or service, one of the things that you have to consider is how's that going to impact the bottom line, right? So one of those is you want to put it into a market where you believe it's going to be successful. So we implemented the in-store dietitian. The first one was in Riverview, the Brandon area, in 2012. And it turned out to be wildly successful, but it took us a few years before we added on to that. Last year, in March, we added 3 more, one in St. Pete, one in Palm Harbor, and one in Wesley Chapel. So today we have 4. We still want to see that grow, but it's one of those things that the more you get implemented, the more data you're able to gather and study it a little more and figure out what works, what doesn't work. So it's still in that pilot phase, but we're hopeful that it's going to expand.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a crazy question. Okay, the Golden Gate store down in Naples,
Yes, ma'am.
that's a beautiful store and a very large store. Is that one of your largest stores, or do you have the stores?
What's the address?
It's Candiani Trail.
Or do you know?
I
Yeah, you
don't
know.
know. It's Candiani Trail.
Is it called Golden Gate?
I believe it's called Golden Gate. Let's say that plaza, Jennifer. I think so too. It's a beautiful store, rather new. They remodeled it and they expanded it, probably about maybe 3 or 4 years old. I love shopping there. I go to Naples that often, but I just did it. You can't. It's a beautiful, large store.
I'm not pulling anything out of Golden Gate. But if it was remodeled and it's large, was it maybe an old Albertsons? Was it one of the Albertsons? The largest store that we build, that we have ever built is 65,000 square feet. We build about 6 of those. We don't build those anymore. Today, the largest store that we build is 56,000 square feet, and we don't build many of those. The one that you're referring to is probably 54,000 square feet, if I'm guessing, if it's a large store. It's probably 54. The largest store that we operate, I want to say, is 92,000 square feet, but that was in Albertsons that we acquired. Those are a bear of a store. It is hard to manage a store that is so large. You may not realize this, but an average store, even a 45,000 square foot store, we carry 60 to 80,000 different products. When you get into a 100,000 square foot store, that item count may be on the higher side, but it just means that you got more of it. And that makes it difficult on personnel to keep it stocked, because we don't want to see holes in the shelf, because that's not appealing to the customer. But then why would we acquire a site like that? Because it's a great site. And we know that Albertsons wasn't successful, but we could be. So, yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us where you source your orange juice?
We source all of our produce locally, if possible in season.
Locally to Lakeland? Or,
Locally everywhere. So, okay, so give you an example. Tomatoes are another hot topic. I'll bring it up. We source tomatoes from all over the state of Florida. Yes, the growers ship them to Lakeland for them to be processed through our produce warehouse, and then they're shipped back out to our stores. But that produce, whatever that item is, it could be grown right here in Bonita, Fort Mike, wherever. We're going to source as local as we can. The thing with produce, with any produce, is it's got a very short shelf life. And so you can't afford to source from the other side of the world if you can avoid it, because you're just eating up that window of how long it's good. Anyone else? Okay. Well, thanks so much. Appreciate your coming.